Hello, and welcome to the No Wrong Notes podcast, a show hosted by me, Veronica Kokos, holistic voice teacher and singer just like you. Grab a cup of tea, relax, and sit back as we discuss all things singing technique, mindset tips, and more so you can show up as the most confident and creative singer you can be. All right, so I am here with Miss Kathryn Whitbeck. Thank you so much for coming on the No Wrong Notes podcast today.
Thank you for having me, Veronica.
All right, Katie, so let's go ahead and jump right in. It would be great if you could tell the listeners who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are in your career today as a performer, as a singer.
Well, my name's Kathryn Whitbeck. I also go by Katie. I'm from San Marcos, Texas. That's my hometown, born and raised. And I also went to school at Texas State University with Veronica, where I studied vocal performance. I got a degree in vocal performance. I later worked in the Navy as a musician. I was a singer in the Navy. And then I had a baby, so I got out. And now I'm still singing at a church, which I did back in Texas. I have a rock band. We're much more than just a rock band, but I call it a civilian band because when you're in military music, anything that you do outside of that, we refer to it as a civilian group. So I'm in a civilian rock band. And then occasionally I perform with Symphonicity, which is an orchestra in Virginia Beach. And I have a few dates coming up with Virginia Symphony Orchestra, which I'm really excited about. And that's what I do.
Yay, awesome. I'd like to go in a little bit deeper to your previous work singing with the Navy. Can you share with listeners what the most exciting thing about your work singing with the Navy was and what the most difficult part of that work was?
Well, it's just a fantastic opportunity for musicians and for singers as well. And the most exciting thing, this might be a boring answer, but was getting to perform. And the reason I say that is because we actually do a lot more than just perform. We have collateral duties. So we have administrative things that we have to do, which between me and you, not crazy about. So when we did actually, we've set up, we've rehearsed, and now we actually get to perform. That was my favorite thing. I actually enjoyed doing a deployment on the ship and being out at sea. It's hard, but it's also the most fun I've ever had, the hardest I've ever laughed. Um, the most difficult thing about that job was, I'll tell you what it was. Military and art. It's kind of like oil and water. So it's like, how do you mesh these two things that really, it's objectivity with subjectivity, rank versus, well, I don't want to get too far into that, but it's people have positional authority in certain cases where, I might be leading a group, but I'm not the highest ranking person. I never did that, but you see that where a lower ranking person has been given this positional authority to lead this ensemble. But how do you go about saying what you need to say to people if you're worried about reprisal? And it can be that meshing of, like I said, military and art. It's not a natural thing that goes together. So I think that was the hardest thing about it.
Wow, that is really interesting. And you mentioned before about the deployment. What does that look like? Like, I mean, you mentioned going to sea, but what does your daily life look like doing that?
Well, when the musicians or when the band is on a ship, the reason we're there is so that when the ship pulls into port somewhere, whether it's in Southeast Asia, which is where we had gone, or South America, Central America, we're performing for the people. Like it's a diplomatic mission. So when the ship comes into port, we start working. Whereas a lot of the other sailors on the ship, they're working underway. And then when the ship comes into port, they're on liberty and they're out having a good time. So the deployment that I was on, we would rehearse, like we'd wake up on the ship, make your bed, whatever, go rehearse in the band space. And it's like trying to rehearse when it's like it's kind of weird. And we did other things too, sweeping and cleaning and stuff and eating. And I mean, I don't know. It was a lot of downtime. I will say the musicians, to be honest, had a lot of downtime. You can work on getting qualifications for things. I didn't do any of that because I said I have to memorize the anthems for Vietnam, Philippines, Korea, Indonesia. I don't have time to do this other stuff. I need to focus on, and also,
Wow.
as you know, we have to focus so much on our health, and especially being on a ship, it can be dusty. And if one person gets sick in our group, everyone's getting sick. So I really had to focus my energy and attention on staying healthy and then also memorizing those anthems and memorizing other repertoire that we had. So, yeah, so basically when we come into port, that's when we're working. Also, we had some VIP receptions on the ship while we were in port. And so, for example, when we were in Indonesia, the US ambassador to Indonesia came on the ship, and it was a jazz trio, I think me, a bass player, a guitarist, maybe a drummer, and we would perform for those foreign dignitaries. That was really cool. I liked that. You know what I mean? That was like,
Yeah, that is so cool.
yeah, it was very fun.
That's totally cool. I appreciate though you sharing all of that with us. I think that's like really fascinating and interesting. Now, kind of pivoting a little bit to maybe what you're doing currently, which is, working as an active performer and also balancing that with motherhood. What does that look like? I guess what are some of the challenges of that between like, you know, doing this line of work and also wanting to spend time with your child? I mean, talking about some of that.
Yes. Well, I will say that before I had a kid, if I needed to take a nap, if I needed to get more sleep, if I needed whatever I needed to do before a performance, I could do that. I had way more time to sit down and practice than I do now. But my purpose is about a million times bigger. If I have a bad day performing now, I might be sad about it, but I'm not as down as I used to be because that's the only thing I had back then. Right? It's like my whole identity was a performer. So if I have a bad performance, what am I? But now I'm a mother, which is a more important role than being a performer. So I have a bad day, I have a bad night, it's okay. But also, it takes a lot of pressure off, which in turn has allowed me to perform better because I'm less nervous,
Nice. Yeah.
if that makes sense. I'm having more fun.
Yeah.
So I find myself having an easier time singing and performing because I'm not so in my head about it. I'm focusing all the time, even when I'm not by Theodore. He's at the forefront of my mind. And you remember, like in voice lessons, when you're in college or high school, a lot of it is learning how to relax. And they'll have you walk around, right? Like just walk around, loosen up, let's lay on the floor, let's do things to relax, right? And so by having something so much bigger to focus on, which is my son, it's loosened me up psychologically, physically. And yes, I've made a lot of big strides technically after having my kid, which I didn't think was going to happen, but it happened.
That is so beautiful. And I think that something that I try to get across to my students is that when it comes to things like performance anxiety or nervousness and things like that, I always find that thinking about the bigger picture is like one of the most calming things. Because, like, once you realize that there's this whole world out there, there's this whole bigger picture, this bigger purpose, it makes this performance or it makes this gig feel so much, I don't know, like not insignificant, like it's still a beautiful like creative act and it still is significant, but it just doesn't feel quite as daunting. And I think that
Hmm.
you really hit something on the head there that's really important. Going off of, you mentioned voice lessons and kind of doing all these funky things, trying to relax. I want to talk a little bit about, going to music school and whatnot. Is there anything that you wish you had learned while in music school that you didn't learn that would have been helpful to know as a professional singer?
I I think that I actually got everything that I needed to get from school, from Cheryl, my teacher, from I, I will say this doesn't really answer your question. I wish they had allowed us to test out of ear training and I could have saved about 1,000 hours of my life. Um,
The Year Shields. Do you remember singing Year Shields?
oh gosh, yes.
So
Yes, yes,
mi
yes.
ti do fa mi ti
I
do.
do remember that. No, because so like the thing is, I was a C student, and you might think, oh wow, you tried really hard and you were a C. I was a C student because I like didn't do any of the homework. And then I just came in and did the test. But it's like, let us test
Uh-huh.
out. I mean, I think for everything that should be an option. But
Yeah.
I will say this, I vocally, technically, and as a person, I matured after college. And that just needed to happen for a lot of other things to fall into place, technically and artistically. So I actually think that I got a lot of great things from the Texas State music program. And then it was just up to me after that. It was things that I needed to figure out.
Yeah, no, I think that I gained a lot of really useful skills at Texas State and then later at George Mason. And you mentioned something about, growing even beyond college. And I think that that is so important. It's just like if there's something that you feel like you lack, or maybe there's a skill you want to develop further, there's so many opportunities beyond higher education to expand those skills. And I think that it's so important to keep learning and growing as we age. I feel like I've even learned so much in just the last 6 years after grad school, where it's like, you know, it's like school is not the be all end all. And moving on a bit, one thing that I always admire about you as a singer is how versatile you are. You really sing Baroque, pop, rock, doing all the things. Obviously, we were both classically trained, and this maybe speaks a little bit more towards the technical side of things. What musical skills do you think have been most useful to you in navigating between different genres? And do you have any hot takes when it comes to singing?
Oh, okay. So the first one first. Don't you don't even have to ask me to give my opinion, but if you do, get ready. No,
Yeah.
so I will say, so like in preparation for my audition with the Navy, I knew that they wanted versatility. Through my research, I watched a lot of videos on YouTube of the fleet band, and I said, okay, one thing that I'm noticing among all these singers is that they're all pretty versatile. So I think that's something that they're going to want. And then I thought to myself, what kind of singer can do lots of different genres and also sing a lot and not damage their voice? What's a type of singer that is pretty well rounded like that? And I thought musical theater singers, right? That's the first thing that comes to
Yes,
mind.
yeah.
So, and also a recording that comes to mind is Kristen Chenoweth singing "Glitter and Be Gay" when they did like a minimally staged production of Candide, and I'm like, it's like I think this is the answer here. So I sought out a musical theater teacher, and I found Caitlin Hopkins, who's the musical theater director at Texas State University, and I had a few coachings with her, and I told her, I was like, I need to know how to belt. And at this point, I couldn't even take the vibrato out of my, or I could take the vibrato out of my voice, but it was tight and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And she helped me pretty quickly. It was pretty remarkable how how quickly she was able to make me do some things. And so I studied those people. I watched a lot of those videos and master classes. So that's the type of singer now that I kind of look toward in terms of how do I maintain my classical chops, my contemporary chops as well.
Yeah, and I feel like, especially in this day and age, if you want to be a singer or be any sort of performer, I think the more that you can cross train in different styles, I mean, you can. I feel like for me, I tend to prefer that route where it's like you're kind of dabbling in a bunch of different genres. I mean, there's nothing wrong with specializing in any one thing, but I think, especially for the work that you've done, I think that that was like super, super crucial. Now, to the second part of that question, what are your hot takes when it comes to singing?
So the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm seeing a lot of this, is a lot of imitation singers or young singers or even professional singers really just imitating something else that they've seen. So when I was at Texas State and Cheryl would give me a new piece, if it was something that I'd never heard before, I would keep it that way. I would not go on YouTube and I would not go look up other singers doing this aria. And I asked her, like I want to do a lot of obscure like early music opera or baroque. So it was a lot of stuff that I had never heard before. And I went to the practice room with the paper and the ink and did not listen to other recordings. And then only after I worked on it or even performed it at a recital, I would go listen and be like, "Oh, okay, so they interpreted that that way. That's cool. Oh, she interpreted it the same way that I did. Okay, that's cool too." And not allowing yourself to be so influenced by other artists. Although I do understand too if for example, if you're not a jazz musician but you've been tasked with doing a jazz piece of music,
Yeah.
then I can understand listening and letting that inform your creativity. But even in tone, I hear a lot of imitation. Just do you find what you're, and I know I'm putting this very simply, but find what your natural voice is and go from there. Be real, just be you.
Yeah, yeah, and you're exactly right where it's like I feel like imitation really helped me in learning how to sing like pop rock music since that was not something that I had been trained in college and in grad school. And so it's like, on one hand, I think imitation can be really helpful, but that shouldn't be the end goal. That should just, I think for me, it's useful as like a learning tool, but if that's just your end point, is just sounding like someone else, I think that all of us have so much more to offer. And I think you're exactly right in that you have to start with your baseline, your unique voice, and then build upon that. And I think that that is so, so, so important.
Can I give you another hot
Yeah.
take?
Yeah. Give us another hot take.
So there's there's this culture of like face tuning and photoshopping
Uh-huh.
and then putting it on Instagram, which can be harmful because people think, why don't I look like that? Oh my God, that's unattainable. It's also true, people posting videos of them singing and then you hear them live or and it's like, wait a minute, that's not what you sounded like
Yeah.
on Instagram. And I would just, to put a positive spin on it, I would just say kudos to people that share and post their real sound, whatever instrument or voice. I think you should put a little disclaimer if you've tuned
Yep.
things or edited things like, hey, this isn't really what I sound like. And then one more hot take and I'll be done. Have you noticed people singing with their hands like like almost like they're
Yes,
moving?
yes, yes. I've seen
You know what
that.
I
I
mean?
see that a lot on TikTok and Instagram where it's like, somebody in a room, like a kitchen or a garage, and they're just like this.
And the thing is,
Yeah.
and another thing is like the facial expressions.
Yeah.
I'm so down with intense, deep facial expressions and hands if what you're singing, if the subject matter's deep. But it'll be like, Veronica, it'll be like, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. And it's like, you're not really saying any, do you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
let's just pull it back just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, and I think you're really speaking to something important there, which is intention. Like, I feel like what you're singing about and what you're doing, facial expression wise or body language wise, I feel like those things need to be tied together somehow. Speaking of performance, what do you think are some essential skills that singers should have in order to put on a successful performance on stage? Maybe going off of what we were just talking about with facial expressions and gestures and things like that.
So I guess this would be for contemporary or classical. Um, Knowing that there's no such thing as an easy piece. And I remember one time it was juries at Texas State, and each person was waiting to go into the recital hall and do juries. And somebody said, "Oh, I'm not worried if they pick this piece. This is the easy piece." And I said, "There's no such thing as an easy piece. Maybe technically." So first of all, having respect and regard Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For each number that you're doing. And this sounds silly, but being prepared on everything, because if you go in and there's a piece or a part of the piece that you're not fully prepared on, that's going to make you nervous, and then that's just going to affect the whole performance. So having taken the time to be prepared, and then I would say that what I was talking about before, um making it yours and not going out there and imitating, but you have sit with this piece. You're going to do the things you're going to do because that's what you feel it needs and for no other reason. And then in terms of, I will say, in terms of like the acting or that aspect of it, I thought it was great at Texas State that Dr. Mungo had us do straight theater classes. And he put such a big emphasis on not just opera theater, straight theater, and going over to the drama building and doing that. That was fantastic. So I still implement all those little things that I learned from those drama teachers. I
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Because I do feel like even in the contemporary space, you know, you want to put on a good show. You really want to come alive on stage, and that's like even why I have my students like act out the lyrics of their songs, even if it's like a pop song. Because I'm just like, let's go to the extreme to see what emotions are kind of at the heart of this, and then we can dial it back and kind of simplify it and make it something less crazy and not like just pure acting. But
Sure.
yes, I love that. I love that. Speaking of performance topics, what are your pre-performance rituals and routines, and do you ever struggle with performance anxiety?
So, in terms of getting ready for a performance, as long as I'm healthy and I've had enough sleep, I don't really do anything different. If I'm sick, if I'm suffering from allergies, which I am now, I'll do the little things that I need to do to take care of that and take whatever, Mucinex and blah blah blah. But normally, I don't do anything different. Performance anxiety, this is a big one. So I used to have it, and then I heard about beta blockers.
Oh,
Everyone's taken
nice.
beta blockers.
Yeah.
All the DC military musicians, before they had their audition, they took beta blockers. And so I got on them, and I had, so my first performance, my first gig, it was an anthem gig. So when you're a singer in the military, you do a lot of, just, we call them anthem gigs. You go to a ceremony, you're the person that sings the anthem. And so I would get nervous before that, because even for a professional singer, I feel like the anthem is still difficult, especially when you're like, do I do it in a classical style or do I do contemporary? And sometimes I would decide that as I'm up there waiting to start. But I remember the first gig that I had after starting beta blockers. I was standing up there, no nerves at all, totally relaxed. And the color guard was supposed to come up with the flags, and they didn't. But they were cueing me to start singing, which normally this would be freaking me out, right? It's like, oh my God, do I wait for them to come or do I go ahead and go? And I just remember being so utterly relaxed. I was still thinking about what I needed to do, but I was completely relaxed. And after however many months, or maybe it was a year that I would take beta blockers before a performance, I realized, because I was scared that I might need them forever, right? These are so effective and so good. Oh my God, am I going to take these? What am I going to do if I forget, if I travel and I forget to take them? Am I going to be a nervous wreck? What I found was, okay, now I know that it's humanly possible in this universe for me to get up here and do a really good job. I know that that's possible. So now I don't need them because I know it's possible. And that's how it happened. And so now I don't, the only time I get nervous is if I haven't had a lot of time to prepare for something, or I'm sick and I'm wondering how that one note is going to go. Other than that, I don't get nervous, and I credit the beta blockers for that. Having taken them, and they allowed me to realize, okay, you can do this.
Yes. Yeah. I think that is so interesting where I feel like everybody kind of has their own thing that they do to kind of navigate performance anxiety. And something that I even talk about with my own students, it's all very like centered around like movement or breathing exercises or like more holistic things. But it's like even things like these kinds of medications and things like that and these substances, I think you're touching upon something important, which is that you're not dependent on these things anymore, but they kind of showed you a way in to performing in this really present kind of way. And I think it's also really cool how you were like, I've got evidence for this now that I can do this.
Mhm.
And now I'm like, let's just go, And so I love that.
Exactly.
I think that that is so cool. Last question. I know you also perform with the Brass Wind, a band that's based in the Hampton Roads area, singing lead and backup. What skills do you think are important when collaborating with other musicians in a professional setting, especially when collaborating with so many instrumentalists?
Well, I will say when you first come into a group, and I had to learn this as a classical singer that transitioned to contemporary. If you're the rookie, take it down a notch. Take your attitude and your know-it-allness down. It's about respect, right? And I'll just say this real quick, and I'll get back to answering the question. But I remember, like in college, we were talking about college earlier. If you want to go to a toga party on the weekend and not look at your music, that's fine if it's only going to affect your private lessons. But when you go into chorale and we're all having to wait on you because you don't know your part, now your choices in your personal life are affecting other people. So when I show up to a brass wind rehearsal and I haven't looked at something as much as I needed to, just know that that's affecting everyone else. And so that being prepared, having respect for other people. I'll get specific. If you're singing with other people, learning like Curtis is the lead singer, right? Learning all of his little nuances. I've been singing with him so much now that I can look at him and how he breathes, and I know, oh, he's gonna take it up the octave, or he's gonna do like. So I think time. I think just having a lot of time with these people is going
Yeah.
to allow you to gel. And then also, this is a big one that doesn't have to do with music, but if there's a disagreement or a dust up or a little whatever, being able to put your ego, my ego aside and say, hey, I'm gonna apologize about this. We're gonna talk about it and then we're gonna move on. That's so important. It's not that you never have dust ups and it's not that there's never drama. It's how you handle it and move on. And that the reason that's so important is because, oh my gosh, that's gonna affect the music, as you know, right? If people are beefing and they're trying to have a good fun concert, oh, it's like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
But if you're
Yes.
all if everyone's cool and everyone's good and open and honest, and it's not that we never fight, but we talk it out and we have enough respect for each other that we are able to do that, then that's when you get some really good moments and you have trust in each other.
Oh man, that is really good. I hear that and it's like, being professional, being prepared, being humble. Also, it sounds like you're really like paying attention to the details. So it's like really kind of intuiting if he's breathing a certain way, then I'm going to respond in this way. So it's like building that skill through paying attention to the details and things like that. I think that that is really really awesome and so
And
important.
yes, and another thing is what I've noticed is, how people talk about twin harmony or sibling harmony is so tight. I
Mm.
think it might just come down to how much you're around and how much you sing with someone else. Because
Mm.
I find myself being so tight with the
Mhm.
lead singer, and then it's made me think that's the reason I've been so tight with my brother when we sing together. It's just because you're doing it so much together.
And you're just like present in the moment and paying attention too, right? You're not just like honed in on your part, but it's
Oh
this
no.
this collaborative effort where you're making something together, and that is so important. I love that. That is
Yeah,
awesome.
almost listening entirely to what he's doing. I have a lot of him in my monitor.
Mhm.
So choral singing, again, this is how classical training has helped in contemporary singing. Sometimes, as you know, in choral singing, you can't hear yourself and
Yeah.
you have to trust yourself. And that concept is foreign to a lot of musicians, a lot of contemporary musicians that have the perfect mix in their ears. And so something that I'll do sometimes, that I've done a lot actually, is kind of like 99% of my listening is to Curtis and only 1% on myself. And then I listen to it back and it's this almost perfect synchronicity. Is that a word?
Yeah, or synchronization, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, would you like to go into some rapid fire questions?
Yes.
All right,
Oh
let's
yeah.
do it. So
Okay.
my first one that I always like to ask is coffee or tea?
Coffee,
How do you like your coffee?
milk, sugar.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
just keeping it simple.
Hmm.
What is a song that you're currently working on or currently practicing?
My heart will go on.
Oh my God! Oh wow! Perfect
Yes.
timing with all this Celine Dion
Yes.
coming out. Yeah, that's so cool. What is a song that you've been playing on repeat lately?
It's French, and that's my least favorite language, but it's Arc en Ciel, Rainbow
Okay.
by Polo y Pan or Polo y Pan. It's like they're a dance. I don't usually listen to like dance
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
like that, but it's really great. It's good. I'll send it to you.
That's cool. What
Yeah.
is your favorite book?
90 Days to Sight Reading Success.
No! What?
No, I mean, I listen, I that taught me how to sight read.
Honestly, yeah, 90 Days to Sight Reading Success. That was a Dr. Morris Stevens, yeah, I think wrote that maybe with
Hmm.
I forget who else he wrote it, but yeah, highly recommend if you want to sight read. What is a TV show that you're currently watching?
I've been watching a lot of Forensic Files
Okay,
on
nice.
Amazon Video.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. What
Yeah.
is the best singing advice you've ever gotten?
The piece of advice that comes to mind was from vocal pedagogy at Texas State and learning about the Bernoulli effect
Oh yeah, yeah,
and air management.
yeah.
And like you've got a balloon that's full and you're barely, I mean, that's really technical. That's not like a fun answer, but just I think a lot of it comes down to how you're managing your air.
Yep, yep. Yeah, no, totally. I have that image from the textbook, I think, but I think about that often. It's definitely been really valuable in my teaching and my singing. So definitely, that's some good stuff. All right, is there anything else that you'd like to share with listeners, like where they can find you online, or any other advice that you'd like to share with listeners before we end?
Well, if you're interested in watching me perform and you're in the Hampton Roads area, I do perform with Brasswind, so you can find that on Facebook, Instagram, or thebrasswind.com. I'm going to be performing with Symphonicity, which is an orchestra in Virginia Beach, on August 8th at the Neptune Festival. It's a pops concert. That's where we'll be doing My Heart Will Go On and some other movie music from big movies.
Nice. Wow.
Um, yeah, and then something that I would like to say to people, be yourself, don't be discouraged. If you're speaking the truth and it's you versus 100 people, then still keep speaking the truth, even though it's you versus 100 people.
That is so beautiful. Oh my goodness. That's really awesome. That's so awesome. And I'll put all of that information about, the brass wind and things like that in the show description.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Katie, for coming on the No Wrong Notes podcast. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed talking with you today.
I really enjoyed it. This has been wonderful. So thank you for having me.